Hey gang, quick update on Foliage Renderer here for you. This is some work in progress stuff that will be going up on the GitHub soon and then eventually pushed to the asset store when we kind of get to a logical chunk of stuff. Thank you to everybody who's been submitting use cases in the Discord. That's super helpful. If you don't know how to get on the Discord, check out the documentation. That will tell you how to join. And if you want to get stuff off the GitHub, so you can get all these updates faster, uh, that is now available as well for those of you who are familiar with using the GitHub invoicing bot from Jason's other assets. That is available on the Dicewrench Discord now as well. Cool. So first, let's talk editor performance, gameplay performance. Some of you working with Microverse, as you can see, we're here in the Microverse demo scene with its 16 pieces of terrain. It's possible to kind of slam that coming in or out of play mode or just doing something wacky, like, say, setting the heather detail here up to a draw distance of 10,000. The editor can sort of get stuck where it's trying to update all 16 of those terrains all at once, then frame to frame, because the editor keeps ticking, because it's trying to draw the progress bar. It keeps noticing that the terrain is still dirty, and so it keeps trying to read the terrain, and blah, 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 and you get kind of stuck in this loop. Okay, so in order to speed terrain updating up, we'll just not update terrain until we care about it, right? So now Indirect Renderer has these two new checkboxes. Distance check updates. This was already being performed for LOD groups, but now it's also being applied to trees. And we're a lot more aggressive about calling out terrain updates we don't care about. So distance checks on or off will let you sort of care about distance, and then the frustum check will see if the terrain is in view as well, and then accordingly update whether or not it needs to update anything there. So distance checks apply second or not, basically. But it will look at the distance of all the details that you're drawing or all the trees, and then so it's not just looking at the distance of the terrain, it's looking at the distance of the things you want to draw of the corresponding type. Now I left these exposed here instead of just doing this all the time, because if you had a very small terrain situation, like one terrain in your scene, or like 3 in a row, or maybe even just 2 by 2, you might just be better off performance-wise updating all of them all the time. And the answer to that is going to depend on your max graphics buffer that you've set here, how frequently you're making changes, or if it's just view-based, what you're streaming versus what you're doing at load, so on and so on and so on. So, right. So you're still going to have to tailor all of this to match your content. Maybe someday I'll do a wizard that like asks you some questions and tries to figure it out, but probably not, because that still won't cover every use case. So that's here for you, and I have not noticed, as I've been goofing around, any sort of editor instability. This is URP 2022. It's doing fine, which I know a bunch of you are working in. So there you go. There's that good news in terms of performance. Now, the other big mystery that we've been having is a lot of you are being like, hey, I turn the stuff on, but my things don't show up. And I believe I know why. So if we look at the Foliage Renderer here, there are basically 3 things for any given prototype, right? A detail, say, like this heather here. There are 3 things involved in whether or not that's going to show up. And that is the max draw distance value that you have set here, or in the override on that thing itself. So that's kind of 1.5. Then you have the LOD group, and then you have any fading that happens auto-magically in the shader, right? So if all 3.5 of those things aren't in sync, you're going to get unexpected results. And I think that's what a lot of you are seeing. For example, right now we're set to alpha cutoff here, but if we set this to dither fade, this 250 draw distance is going to control the maximum limit, right? So I think the default value here is like 100 or 80 or something. It's quite short. So if you set your draw distance In the foliage render here, out to 1,000, but nothing's drawing further. It's probably because your shader's fading it out, or you're culling the amount of draw distance in your LOD group beyond a certain point, right? So you're going to need to check all your content. In order to help streamline some of this now, I've extended the foliage renderer. When you have an object assigned here, I've got a little rollout. Come on. That'll show you all the materials in use within that object. So you can quickly get over here to your header, it'll ping it for you, and you can make your changes and blah, 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 you're all set. Because I can't rely on you always using the foliage renderer shaders, right? But if you are using the foliage renderer shaders, and you go ahead and you change this from quality settings to manual, and then you type in here like 500, and hit enter. It's now a delayed float field, so we don't draw all this stuff all the time. There you go. It'll set your fade on your material automatically. Now we're at 500 here, and it all syncs up, right? So that's great. So what's left to do there is I'm going to try to curate your LOD groups as well, so that LOD group stuff gets sort of adjusted accordingly, and so that stuff kind of always stays in sync if you're using foliage renderer stuff and the base stuff. Maybe someday I'll make it cute and have more coverage, but for now, that's what to expect. I also did some shader optimization, so there's just less math. Everything should just draw faster if you're using the foliage renderer stuff, which is cool. And then alpha threshold here wasn't really being respected when you were in dither fade mode. So now if you come all the way down, this will like not cut off stuff at all, but you can go back here to cutoff mode and it's the same. And then you can slide this back and get something in the middle, which is what always looks like, right? Regardless. And then if we switch this to dither fade, you can sort of tell YouTube is going to compress the heck out of this, so you probably can't. But this is dithering to see through here. It does change the intensity a little bit, but you can see our draw distance is all the way out there, very far. So there you go. That's the good news. Editor boost, yes. Shader boost, yes. Strong suspicions and starting to sort of automagically fix some stuff for you on why things aren't showing up, but also some clues for you to apply yourselves while you're getting started. Oh, you'll see there's some debug logs here for like, hey, I synchronized your materials, blah, 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 blah. And this is a little less scary now that it just tells you it updated the culling shader. Instead of being like, I detected a mismatch, I'm freaking out. It's now just like, hey, I did that thing real quick. Which is kind of a little bit more appropriate and shouldn't be scary, but you know, people see a warning, they lose their minds. All right, so there you go. Questions or concerns or thoughts, of course, leave them in the Discord. And thanks. And I'll be pushing this up to GitHub soon. I will keep you all posted, of course. But that's it for now. Thanks.